allow citizens to gamble in legal casino in their own country. Okay? Okay. Without further ado, I'd like to call House to order and invite the first speaker from the government team to open the debate. Who's signing?
Somebody not a judge time.
Oh yeah. Right.
Any of the other trainers that are not doing shit in the back?
Oh,
All done. Okay.
Go.
Mr. Speaker, just because you ban prostitution, that doesn't necessarily mean that prostitution is going to go away. Just because you ban specific drugs, that doesn't mean people are not going to do drugs. And we believe that same principle applies for casinos as well. We strongly propose a two-point policy coming from state government. Number one, we're going to allow these individual casinos to apply for the government, and they are going to comply from the rules of that specific government. If they actually pass that specific test, they are going to be branded as a legal casino. Two, there's going to be very specific taxation on towards that specific casino for two levels. One, on that casino as a whole, so that casino is a specific individual organization that pay taxes towards the government. And two, also on an individual level, in which you actually derive profit from that specific action, you're also going to get taxed at the end of the day. Mr. Speaker, as I've already told you, we strongly believe that the problem of gambling and casinos themselves is not going to go away just because you legalize it. We strongly believe that this is something that's going to continuously progress. Illegal casinos are going to continuously go about, and that causes social harms. That is why we are allowing these individual local people to do it for four main reasons. So thank you, ma'am. Our first reason, or our first argument, is going to tell you why everyone has a right to use their money as they see fit. Our second argument will be telling you why these individuals are going to be far more responsible for their own individual actions. Our third argument will tell you why by legalizing these casinos, it incentivizes people to go to legal casinos. And my second speaker, Mingun, is going to tell you about how it brings about better transparency according to those criminal organizations that dominate these specific illegal casinos. Let's go into my first argument about how everyone has a right to use their money as they see fit. The main characterization of a specific casino is that you go there to derive pleasure. And we believe that that same principle occurs everywhere, but everyone has a right to do that because fundamentally you will have a right to increase your specific profit basically upon the money that you specifically earn, and you see it as you basically see fit. The clear example is basically the stock market. The stock market is a specific institution within a government in which you have a specific risk factor. You use your money to specifically invest in a specific stock, and it fluctuates based upon like currency rates, it fluctuates based upon like other individual factors, and the fundamental principle behind this is that it is unpredictable. However, you derive pleasure from looking at the stock market by increasing your amount of numbers, by increasing the amount of investment that you have within the status quo. And we believe that that same principle should also apply towards the casinos, but because casinos themselves are also a principle within itself and using your specific money as you see fit and deriving pleasure out of it. Our second reason why everyone has like the right to basically use money as they see fit is because the consequences are only derived and only like targeted to oneself. Without any social harms whatsoever, side opposition has no reason whatsoever to basically ban casinos at the end of the day. Because fundamentally, we don't see any social harms whatsoever, because if you basically if you go to get a jackpot and you don't get that jackpot, you're only losing money based upon yourself, and we strongly believe that there's no social harm whatsoever and people are responsible for their specific actions.
Sir.
Before I go on, yes ma'am.
I think that there actually is a social harm because it's going to lead to addiction, which is also going to impact not only the society but also the family and the people around that person.
Just because you have addiction, Mr. Speaker, if we can even see in the case of the Netherlands, once they actually legalized their marijuana market, that actually led to the reduced amount of addiction within that specific country. We believe that that same principle applies under our case. Our second argument will tell you why people are being more responsible for their specific actions. We acknowledge the fact that casinos themselves are a place where you have a lot of illegal criminal organizations. But the fundamental principle behind these illegal organizations is that it is not funded or organized or like monitored by the government per se. So you don't actually pay taxes upon the amount of revenue that you actually get. You actually go to the specific casino, you try to get a jackpot, and you should normally get proportionate like tax money out of that specific jackpot. But inevitably within the status quo, you don't get a lot of revenue. The government doesn't get a lot of revenue. But what happens in the status quo is that if you basically get bankrupt, if you basically get unemployed for the simple fact that you are like, basically because you did like this specific gambling, we believe that the government actually intervenes and actually tries to provide as much social welfare as possible, trying to get this individual a specific job, actually giving like a specific like package of money so that this individual can live a proper life without any like reparations whatsoever, without any sort of compensation given towards that specific government. We believe that this is very problematic at the end of the day, because if these individuals are here to not pay taxes or not give anything back towards that specific government, we believe that the government should actually legalize the specific market, actually legalize and allow individuals to actually derive tax out of it so that these individuals can become more responsible for their actions. There's a clear parallel example towards this regarding sin tax, because inevitably a government allows you to basically smoke and drink alcohol, although you might have like a risk factor in the far future for getting like lung disease or like liver disease at the end of the day. But you allow this to happen because you pay sin tax, because you basically give like a proportion of that tax so that the government can later intervene, actually benefit the NHS and basically benefit the overall society. We believe that that same principle should apply towards these casinos, because these individuals actually do get bankrupt, and we want to save them at the end of the day, to increase the employment rate, to increase the overall social welfare, so that these individuals can live a quality life that is never guaranteed under the status quo. Let's go into my third argument regarding how it incentivizes these illegal casinos at the end of the day. Because the problem within the status quo is that these illegal casinos are very related to like criminal organizations. There are a lot of criminal organizations like mafia or these other like organizations within themselves. They go into the casinos and they actually do business within that specific organization, because they could basically like do like there's not a lot of transparency. You can do like money laundering and so on and so forth. They actually derive profit out of that specific organization. But inevitably you lose and you basically can't pay the debt once you actually go into a jackpot and you basically fail. So what happens here is that criminal organizations try to like threaten you, they actually kill you. And even in the case of Kim Sang-soo, when he's actually killed for the fact that he wasn't able to pay debt back towards that specific casino. But we incentivize these individuals to come to legal casinos once we allow that legal process. Because number one, this is basically a calculus upon debt versus like basically like paying taxes. They're gonna come up and say that if you basically tax them, not a lot of people will go to legal casinos, they would rather go to illegal casinos. But once you actually go into illegal casinos, you're basically risking your specific life, because if you basically lose in that specific gambling field and you don't have the money to pay back, that is a moral calculus that these individuals are actually going to do, which incentivizes these individuals to go into more illegal casinos and more cleaner casinos and more safer casinos at the end of the day. No one wants to risk their specific life for the kind of profits that they actually do not earn at the end of the day. So Mr. Speaker, I basically told you three things. I clearly told you why individuals have the right to use their money as they see fit, bringing about the parallel example regarding stock market. I clearly told you why this is the same principle as sin tax, and for people being responsible for their own actions based upon the taxations that they actually bring. But we've also told you why these individuals will go into like cleaner casinos and much more better casinos, and not only derive from the social benefits that this individual government actually creates, but the overall society we propose.
Speaker spoke for 7 minutes and 7 seconds.
Thank the Prime Minister for his speech, and now invite the Honourable Leader of Opposition.
The stance coming from the opposition side is very clear. We think that every government has their own value system and they can impose this upon the citizens living within their country, but we think it's problematic when they impose this upon foreigners. So that's what we're going to do in our opposition side. We think what this debate is about is we think it's about what nation state actually is. We think it's about what the government role is, and we think on the government side, we think government is something that represents that society, that group of people living within the society, because they have actually made this contract when they were formed. We think that therefore government is the representative of of the ideals and the appropriate moralities within their own country, you think the government is the one that should make these decisions. Under that, we want to continue on this debate. My substantive arguments will be first about why government and countries have the sovereignty to make these different policies. My second argument will be about the government's duty to protect their own citizens, and I'm going to continue on and touch upon the casino's harms. Before I do that, I want to engage with the previous speakers' arguments and first talk about I want to engage with the previous speaker, and he first talked about why these different people actually have the right to use their money. We think, from my characterization of the government, we think that the government is the party that should make the judgment upon what is harmful and what is not harmful to society. We think that governments that actually view this as harmful, that view casinos as harmful, can actually, regulate this from the very beginning. That's the difference between countries that legalize casinos and illegalize casinos from the very beginning. We don't think this debate is about countries like Macau where they legalize casinos altogether. Rather, this debate is about countries like South Korea where they illegalize casinos to the people living within their own country but only open it to foreigners. We think the government is the one that can actually decide what is harmful to their own people. We think secondly, casinos actually do have some social harm. I'm going to explain this more in my substantive argument, but we think that it actually has a third-party harm. Like I raised in my PY, it actually brings harms to the families living within the addict himself. We think it is harmful and the government actually has a duty to protect these people. His second argument was about why it actually raises people's responsibility. We think this is actually not true because, as I'm going to talk more about the nature of these casinos, we think that these casinos actually bring people to spend their money limitlessly because it's a way to earn quick money and easy money. People will be very easily addicted to it, and we think actually opening up their route to going to more casinos is actually going to make this problem even worse, and we think problems like bankruptcy of a family is going to occur under this legalization of casinos as a whole. We talked about how legalizing casinos can regulate these people furthermore, but we think that illegal casinos are always going to lure people by making it look like they can earn more money if they come to these illegal casinos, and they're going to attract more people. We think black market is always going to exist, but we also think that their taxation policy is unfair because everyone has to pay a certain amount of tax, but that tax is only going to be used to those people who become addicted in the end. Before I move on, yes.
Why are you opposing taxation when you say that it's a government role to impose certain values?
The reason why we think that taxation in this aspect is unfair is because everyone that goes to a casino is going to pay a certain amount of money, but it's only going to be used for the welfare of the people that actually become addicted in the very end. We think that itself is unfair. I'm going to move on into my constructive argument, and first I'm going to talk about the government role, why different countries, why each country has the sovereignty in policy making. Like I already told you, there are countries that legalize casinos and illegalize casinos. We think that this itself reflects a culture in society and the thoughts of the people living within that country. We think when they were making this policy, they actually went through certain processes of negotiating which is best and which is more appropriate and ideal for the people living within the country. We think that that's how the legal system of a country is decided upon from the very beginning. We think it's a result of a consensus within a certain society. So we think a government can actually impose this upon people living within the nation in order to first protect the people living in that nation, but second because the government is a result of the form of representation of the people that actually made that government from the very beginning. We think that the government actually has a freedom in selecting these different policies and sovereignties to these people that are their own citizens. And this should not extend to imposing this upon people from different societies, foreigners. That's why we actually allow and legalize these casinos to foreigners, but not allow it to the people within my own government, within my own society. So moving on into my second argument, I'm going to talk more about why the government's duty, why government's number one priority is to actually protect the people living within my own country. We think that the whole reason why these different governments ban casinos to people living within their own country is because they think casinos are harmful to their people from the very beginning. I'm going to talk more about this in my substantive. But like I told you, the government's number one role is to secure the interest of the people living in my country first. Like I told you already, these a country and a government is formed by a natural, whether it's formed by natural identities mingling together or by artificially formed boundaries. We think that the government, the reason why countries have casinos is we think that these governments actually are responsible to protect the people living within my own country, and at the same time they don't have the right to impose this upon foreigners. We think the policy in the status quo actually reflects that kind of idea from the very beginning. Oh, thank you. Now I'm going to explain to you what harms that come from casinos and the reason why these different governments actually ban casinos from the very beginning, because we think that when these certain governments ban casinos to these people living within their own country, they actually have very good reasons behind this. The biggest reason would be addiction. We think that the biggest harm coming from opening up these casinos to every citizen within that country is that it raises the accessibility of people actually going to that casino from the very beginning. We don't think casinos and gambling is a temporal experience. Rather think that it's actually going to lead people to addiction, like I told you, because it leads them to gain easy money and quick money. We think that now, if people in the process of people becoming addicted, they'll try to fill up the money that they have lost in the first place, and this will only lead them to further gamble and further go to these casinos. But we think the casinos are problematic in the second place because they have this one-sided and asymmetrical information given to these people that gamble, because now these gambling industries know how they function, but the people that gamble don't know this information, and these citizens are going to be fooled and have a wrong perception and think, oh, I can easily earn money, I have a very high percentage of winning if I go to these different casinos. So at the end of the day, it's actually going to fool these different people. We think that this industry itself is bad, and it's different from other things like playing cards, because the harms that come from playing and going to these casinos are fundamentally different. Their weight is completely different. We're very happy to oppose.
Speaker spoke for 7 minutes and 23 seconds.
Now I invite Deputy Prime Minister to respond.
I guess there are some points that are in common with our side and the opposition. We also do concede that the government has the responsibility to protect their people and support their people. That is why we're actually proposing this motion, because in the status quo there is a problem, Madam Speaker. Because the problem is that there are illegal casinos and there are illegal places for the people to go for gambling. And the problem with that is that, as my first speaker clarified, that there are organized crimes and there are unjust ways for these gamblers to go and be exploited. So we want to deal with those problems and actually protect these people and make them responsible for their acts by building legalized casinos for our people. Now I'd like to rebut a few of the points coming from this side one by one, and then move on to my argument about transparency within the gambling industry. First, point number one, taxation is unfair. Taxation is unfair because we're putting burden on other people who do not gamble. However, Mr. Speaker, in the status quo, when you see sin taxes, we also do burden people who are not related to the issue. For example, heavy smokers and heavy drinkers are actually paying sin taxes, and at the same time, other people who do not drink and smoke are paying taxes, some amount of taxes for them. So actually in the society and in the status quo, we're actually dividing the burden, and we do support people, although it's unfair, but we think that is the virtue of our society, paying taxes and supporting the people who need those subsidies. Second point. Secure the interests of people, responsible for people. That is the government's role. Yes, we believe so. Because of that, we think the government should actually step in and actually legalize these casinos and make people who want to gamble and who want to pursue this pleasure from gambling to come into a much safer environment and pursue their pleasure and do whatever they want. And also at the same time being responsible by paying their tax monies and paying those kind of gambling taxes. And then, whether they have some kind of problems or they need subsidies, the government can give those subsidies with those taxes and those acts of responsibility that the individuals done while they are doing illegal gambling in their nations. Point number three, banning casinos. They're banning casinos because it'll bring addiction and severe harm to society. However, Mr. Speaker, first, there will be no actual severe increase in addiction, because as we see in the incidents of Macau, we do not see Macau people addicted to gambling every day. We do not see a lot of people in in gambling in Macau. So also, when you see there are a lot of other things that can be also addictive. For example, stock markets, people look at this monitor, looking at the fluctuations of the stocks, and stay there for hours and hours, and then when they actually get fucked up and spend all their money in those kind of stocks, they pull a whole lot of loans, and they end up just like being gambling. So also, second example, computer games. We play computer games for days and days and days to make my character get the 100 level and buy the sword that I want. Actually, this kind of addiction are still exist in society, and I think casinos and gambling is not that different. We're just trying to provide a much more safer environment and much more responsibility for these people to let them pursue their pleasure. And we believe that there is no social harm, and we think it is actually better for the society, and I'd like to explain in my arguments. First, as I explained, there is no actual social harm, actually socially beneficial. Why? Because when you see illegal casinos, they are intransparent. They're out of the reach of society. No thank you. They're not actually censored or actually regulated by the government anyhow. And in this case, because of this, many organized crimes occur in the base of illegal casinos. The reason is that illegal casinos are places of a lot of flows of money. Money comes in, a lot of money comes out. And because of this, and at the same time, there is no censorship. Because of this, organized criminals can actually exploit this kind of advantage and actually make their base and capital for their organized crimes, and actually expand to other worse crimes such as drug dealing, smuggling, contract murder, and then actually they can use the money from illegal casinos as a base of much severe crime and bad harm for society. So what we're trying to do is here, we're trying to make it casinos as a legal entity, a legal organization that pursues profits just like other ordinary countries, such as our grocery store in my home. So we're trying to make it legalized, and actually just like other companies that get audit from the accountant and actually verify themselves, verification. We want the process of verification of these people, these casinos, that they're doing the right thing, and they're actually pursuing their profit in the right way and paying the taxes. When we pass this motion, we believe the increase of transparency and more cleanness within the industry will actually help people to get out of these kind of unjust, illegal gambles, and we believe the base of criminals and crime will actually decrease and help us to lead us to a much less criminal society. Now, in our side, wrapping up, we believe gambling is not a big problem, because just like as I mentioned, there are a lot of things which can be addictive and which can be harmful for people. However, people take those kind of risks and then they try to be responsible, and also at the same time the government allows them to do so because it is a sole right for them to pursue their individual pleasure. If they want to gamble, if they want to feel good while gambling, no problem. But there's one thing you should do: be responsible for it. Pay taxes in the legalized gambling casinos, and actually let the government help you to play in a much safer environment for your pursuit of pleasure. And secondly, what we're trying to do here is trying to make a better society out of actually decreasing the intransparency in the casino industry and making the flow of money much more clear, and see what's happening and let the money flow to the right way. So we believe we're trying to make a better society. We're trying to let people pursue their own natural rights. So that is why we should win. Thank you.
Speaker spoke for 6 minutes and 12 seconds.
May I invite the second speaker of opposition?
Okay, so Mr. Speaker, the only benefits coming from the government side, like right after DPM speech, that we hear is the fact that they're trying to impose this policy just for the fact that there are a lot of crimes happening in illegal casinos, and to solve and that solvency is the only goal that they are trying to achieve. Instead, we think that this whole debate should be about the impact of when you actually change certain standards of entrance that you actually put in domestic casinos, what's going to happen to the people and the society. And we have proven to you consistently that there is harm to this policy, because casino itself is a harmful activity. activity, and because because some societies know that there is harm to this industry itself, they're banning it to their domestic people from the first place. And that is because government has to protect their own citizens, right? That was the whole case coming from our leader of opposition. Before we move on to our analysis, which is about the harms, basically, to the society, to the poor people and the children, the ones who we think will be especially targeted by this policy, we want to first rebut to several points mentioned by the speakers. So, first of all, the Prime Minister told us how, in end of the PM, is keep using example of how it's similar to stock market. Now, Mr. Speaker, we believe that this example is totally irrelevant from each other because when you're actually looking at these different calculations in stocks, you do use your rationality, you do measure calculations, and that is the profession that these people have. But the difference about casinos is that you lose that rationality. Once you are in that game field, you have this false hope coming over and over to you that you can be a billionaire one day. And that is the kind of, that mechanism is kind of what motivates people to be addicted. And we think that addiction is not a rare case when it comes to casinos in many domestic fields. The reason why people are not addicted when they actually go to foreign countries to do casino is because they have a limit to their stay when they do go to their foreign countries, right? But when that casino is in their domestic field, we think it's going to influence them to be more like addicted and have casinos as part of their lives. That is the threat that the opposition is very scared in this debate. And they talked about like this revenue, how, by paying taxing, this is more fair. And they kept giving us this parallel example of syntax. Well, Mr. Speaker, we believe that the whole question is, why do government actually support the poor class in the first place? It's not a way because they ask for compensation from poor people. Rather, they're fulfilling their duty as a government to protect the very low class, to protect the very fragile class in the society. And we think that the same measure is being stationed in the status quo to very addicted people because there are very few minorities who've been really like impoverished from the society, and that is why the government is trying to protect them. And then they talked about this, and then the Binguni talked about this benefit, which was about how this is actually going to solve the crimes and illegality in many casinos. Well, first of all, we think that with this policy, like if you really want to solve these illegal criminals happening in illegal casinos, then we think you should regulate these casinos more instead of just making more legal casinos so that people will be somehow attracted to going to legal casinos. First of all, we told you that now illegal casinos will lure more people so that people will not worry about paying taxes after they play the game. But more than that, we think there is principally harm to your action of solving this problem because now you're empowering them with legal measures to take away efficiently from these people who are incapable of making rational choices when they go to casinos. We think the same example is this. Just because a country has so many rape cases and women are being victimized by these criminals who rape them, now country is legalizing prostitution. There is definitely harm to that notion because the basic answer to it is, reduce the crime, bring more police stations and, bring more laws, not, legalize a harmful activity that is, that has been a social norm that it's, harm forever. Okay, now, let's move on to the arguments of the opposition. First of all, I'm going to talk about how this is harmful to the poor people. Now, I told you that casino is actually not just any kind of game or any kind of entertainment industry. It's different because it has something to do with your economic status. Some people actually engage in this industry because they want to be rich, because they want to level up their class and their quality of life. And with this whole possibility of luck that they dream, this is why people are becoming addicted, and this is why people become poor at the end of the day, because the probability is actually very low when you actually count them in rational choices. Yes?
We support the idea of social welfare. We support the idea that government's actually coming in and saving them once they are actually bankrupt. That is the status quo. Why is that something bad happening under your model? That's not the status quo.
Can you repeat? Because I don't understand.
Okay, we're basically saying that the government should protect these poor people because they're poor. We support social welfare, we support government saving these people, but that's not under the status quo under your model.
No, it is under the status quo, and we're supporting that. We're supporting people who are victimized by these casino industry to quickly overcome their problems. But once your mechanism of solving this issue is different because you're making it more accessible, which means you're inviting more incapable people into this industry, making unnecessary number of addicts into the society. So why is it really bad to the poor? Well, Mr. Speaker, we think that in the status quo there is a mechanism that actually allows poor people to have less accessibility when it comes to casinos. This is because only people who actually can afford themselves to go into legal casinos outside their country can actually go go and play, right? Because like people who can afford to like make a plane ticket to Macau, or people who can afford to make their plane ticket to Las Vegas, those people are actually only the adults, like people who are above middle class or people who are very, very rich, so that they can entertain themselves with whatever measures they want. We think that this is actually a measure that actually prevents poor people from accessing this industry. However, with your policy, we think that this accessibility is going to get higher, and the very own people who are going to be victimized by this is the poor people who have full streams and who wants to be richer like other people. Not only is this very tangibly harm to their own lifestyle, but we think that principally it's actually diminishing the very work ethics of society, because now you're implementing the notion that government allows you to have that false notions and have that false dreams. And we think that in society where they value that work ethics, like for instance in Korea, we value your success by your own efforts, your hard work, right? We think that's going to diminish the kind of values that a society has. Moving on to the part about children, Mr. Speaker, we believe that there is definitely a clear harm to children when this industry is being accessible to the society. Because now, not only that children will be influenced and have this unnecessary curiosity that they can go to casino next door to their school, or like even if you create school zone, they can still see that casinos exist if they take a bus from like the bus and everything, right? So we think that this is going to create more children to be influenced. But not only this, you're actually making them face more of, like have their more like families become very addicted by this whole game, and also you're going to make these children see these very addicted people in the streets, in the corners. That is why Las Vegas has become like a very own special place for casinos, right? And we think that once you develop these areas for legal casinos, we're going to see more of them, and we think that government has to protect such measures from happening. For these reasons, we're very happy to propose.
Speaker spoke for 7 minutes and 11 seconds.
Can I invite the government whip, please?
Great Wall of China.
If you're going to build your argument upon argumentations like saying that states should have the right to impose certain values upon people, it all links back to the premise of this argument, saying that you should involve a value judgment that separates casinos from all the other addictive activities that individuals can pursue. And there is no analysis whatsoever on why casinos are exclusive to the issue, and that which actually coerce the states to impose its values upon the individuals so it can restrict its values. And since there was no value judgment on gambling apart from addiction in the case of this argument, all the other arguments that stems from that premise actually diminishes like an octopus in a lava, and can actually restrict people from actually doing these activities if the false premise is actually built upon the ideas that you didn't prove. You didn't prove it until the two constructive speakers of your speech, and with that, you lose the debate. Now, I have 3 points to mention in my arguments. Firstly, which government actually does better in protecting its citizens, and which does better in imposing its values. And secondly, about the addiction, is there a justification to actually illegalize casinos based upon addiction alone? And thirdly, do people actually have the autonomy to use their money as they please? Firstly, going on to the issue of which government does better in terms of protection. Well, they say we should protect the citizens. We should protect the citizens with the value that is unilaterally imposed by the government. Well, if so, please justify why casinos is exclusive to the case of stock markets and state lotteries and every other source of risk factors that are involved in using your money. And I will explain to you throughout like tons of parallel examples like how it is not exclusive to the issue of addiction. And if people cannot actually stop gambling, we create several legal casinos in order to protect them. And onto the issue about we should create more police force in terms of regulating these casinos. Well, we say that it is not the casinos that should be regulated, it is the illegal status of these institutions that should be regulated. And in that, we say we build casinos and even make more people enjoy their lifestyles and enjoy their investments of money as they please. And how do you protect people when you're actually making them not accessible to casinos if under your model you wish to protect poor people from engaging in this activity? We impose taxation based upon this principle and say that poor people do have the right to enjoy their pleasure in terms of investing their money. And we make people actually contribute to the society for the future benefits that they may derive. This links back to the sin tax example that we have mentioned to you. You drink alcohol, you drink whatever is harmful to you, you smoke marijuana, and which is eventually harmful to yourself. And that sin tax is eventually, if you don't pay the sin tax based upon that, it is eventually going to backfire on the taxpayers that are not related to these activities. We make people responsible for their actions through the taxations that are involved in certain activities that might be harmful for the individuals. But we do not block that from happening, since there is an inherent risk involved in every activity that they pursue. And onto the notion of accessibility issue that they are talking about. Since these foreigners are the ones that had the plane tickets on their hands and had the money to invest in these casinos, they should have the accessibility while the state steps in order to protect these people. We beg to differ. We reject the idea that the pleasures can only belong to the rich people that actually come from a foreign country. And we say that even the poor people, when they are responsible for their actions with the taxation that is imposed upon them unilaterally, we say that they do have the right to their pleasure. And making people responsible for their actions and making them enjoy their actions, according to the false premise that is being taking granted for the opposition side, we propose a better principle. Yes? Okay, I'm perfect. Okay. Secondly, about the idea of addiction. Why is it a justification, and is it actually a justification? Well, we demand an engagement in the parallel examples that we have actually provided to you. And the only answer that we heard, not from the leader of opposition, from the deputy leader of opposition, was that the stock markets come with rationality, whereas casinos come with irrationality. We beg to differ. People sit day by day and taking risks and taking private loans in order to invest in these stock markets and looking at the computer monitor screens as if there's something in it. That doesn't seem like a rational picture to me. We're not talking about financial experts that are looking into the computers. We're talking about people who have money on their hands and expending it according to their own will. And we say it is also irrational, and we grant this to these individuals at the end of the day. And lotteries, for example, poor people actually do enjoy lotteries. It was an ongoing debate in the United States among these people. And these lotteries actually the major customers of these lotteries are the poor people. And since this is the case, there is no actually distinction and exclusivity that belongs to casinos alone in terms of addiction. Yes, ma'am.
So, sir, what is your justification as to encouraging activities that are really similar to these kind of stock markets or lotteries?
Well, I think this is Andy's idea of shifting the burden to the other side. You need to prove to me the exclusivity of the casinos.